So get this. There's this true story about a jewelry store in Arizona. They had this beautiful turquoise jewelry, but for some reason, it just wouldn't sell. The owner tried everything. Finally, totally fed up, she's about to leave for a trip and scribbles a note for her head saleswoman. Everything in this display case, price times 1/2. But, handwriting, the employee misread it. When the owner got back, every single piece was gone. Why? Because the employee had accidentally doubled the price, not halved it. So how on earth does that happen? Well, that strange little story is our doorway into the incredible work of Dr. Robert Cialdini and his book, Influence. This isn't just about sales pitches or marketing gimmicks. It's about the deep-seated, hidden psychological triggers that make us say yes, a lot of times without us even thinking about it. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the mechanics of how our brains make decisions, and crucially, how those mechanics can be used. To really get the whole jewelry story, first we've got to look at how our own brains are wired. The world is just incredibly complicated, right? To deal with it all, we have to use mental shortcuts. Cialdini came up with this perfect name for them, the click-whir response. This idea actually comes from the animal world, believe it or not. Scientists found that a mother turkey has this fixed action pattern. Her whole mothering instinct is basically triggered by one thing, the cheep, cheep sound of baby turkeys. So in one experiment, she'd see a stuffed polecat, her mortal enemy, and just attack it viciously. But, and this is the crazy part, if they put a little recorder inside that same stuffed enemy that played cheep, cheep, she would pull it close and cuddle it like one of her own. That sound was the only trigger that mattered. That cheep, cheep sound, that's what Cialdini calls a trigger feature. And it's not just for turkeys. We humans have them all over the place. A certain word, a specific situation, even a price. It makes a little click in our brain. And then, whir, this automatic tape starts playing and we act without really thinking. It's an efficient shortcut, sure, but it can also leave us wide open. Which brings us right back to that turquoise jewelry. The tourists who bought it, they probably didn't know a thing about turquoise quality. So they fell back on a shortcut they'd learned their whole lives. Expensive equals good. The doubled price tag was their trigger feature. Click. The expensive is good tape got activated, and whir, they bought the jewelry, walking away thinking they got a fantastic, high-quality deal. Now, to figure out what these triggers are in people, Dr. Cialdini did something amazing. He didn't just hang out in a university lab. He went undercover for 3 years. He got jobs in car dealerships, fundraising organizations, advertising agencies, you name it. He wanted to learn from the pros, the people he calls compliance professionals, whose entire jobs revolve around getting us to say yes. Everything he learned went into the book you see here, and his biggest discovery was this. Even though these professionals use thousands of different tactics, almost all of them fall into just 6 basic psychological principles. These 6 principles are the fundamental levers of human behavior, what he calls the weapons of influence. And here they are. Reciprocation, that powerful need to repay a debt. Commitment and consistency, our drive to stick with our decisions. Social proof, when in doubt, do what everyone else is doing. Liking, we're just more likely to say yes to people we like. Authority, we listen to the experts. And finally, scarcity, the less there is of something, the more we want it. We could spend days on each one, but for now, let's just zoom in on 2 of them to see how they work. All right, let's kick things off with reciprocity. This is probably one of the most powerful rules in all of human culture. We are taught from day one that you have to give back to those who give to you. It's how society works, right? But that ingrained instinct can absolutely be exploited. The core principle here is that we physically hate, just hate, the feeling of being indebted to someone. That sense of obligation creates this real psychological weight, and we feel this urgent need to get rid of it. And that urgency can make us agree to something we otherwise wouldn't, just to clear the slate. In practice, this leads to a technique called rejection, then retreat. It works like this. You start with a big request, one you're pretty sure the other person will say no to. Something like, hey, will you volunteer 2 hours a week for the next 2 years? When they, of course, say no, you then retreat to a much smaller request, which was what you wanted all along. Oh, okay, well, how about just chaperoning a single 2-hour zoo trip? From their perspective, you've made a concession, so they feel this automatic pull to make a concession in return by saying yes. But let's pause here, because this is where things can get dicey. This technique can easily back someone into a corner, where they agree not because they want the thing, but because the social pressure to reciprocate your concession is just too strong. A common mistake is to write this off as just harmless negotiation, when in reality it can be incredibly coercive.
Okay, let's pivot to another weapon, our almost obsessive desire to be and to appear consistent with what we've already done. Cialdini tells this great story about people at a racetrack. Before they placed a bet, they were full of uncertainty. But the moment after they put their money down, their confidence that their horse would win just skyrocketed. Nothing about the horse changed, of course, but their commitment to the decision forced them to believe in it more strongly.
This is the engine behind the classic foot-in-the-door technique. You start with a very small, almost trivial request that's easy to say yes to. For example, researchers asked homeowners to sign a simple petition to keep California beautiful. Easy yes. But then, a few weeks later, they came back with a much, much bigger ask. Would you be willing to put this huge, ugly drive carefully billboard on your front lawn? The people who had signed the petition first were way more likely to say yes to the billboard. Why? Because that tiny initial commitment started to change how they saw themselves. And that's the real danger here. The power isn't in getting that one yes. The strategic play is to subtly shift a person's self-image. By getting that small commitment, you're not just getting a signature. You're turning a person on the street into a civic-minded citizen in their own head. And once they see themselves that way, they become so much more likely to agree to future requests that align with that new identity. It's a very quiet but very powerful transformation. So, look, these principles are basically survival shortcuts. We need them. But as we've just seen, they can absolutely be turned against us. The goal isn't to get rid of them. You can't. The real key is learning to spot when a shortcut is being used to take you for a ride, so you can step back and make a real choice. So here's a practical framework for you. When you feel that gut pull, that pressure to say yes, just take a breath and run through a mental checklist like this. Ask yourself, is this free sample a real gift or is it a compliance tool? Is this doctor in the ad an actual expert or just an actor? Who really benefits if I say yes? Is this bestseller popular because it's good or because of clever marketing? Just asking these questions gives your thinking brain a fighting chance to catch up with your automatic brain. The best defense is really a simple mental flip. Remember that your opponent isn't the salesperson or the fundraiser in front of you. It's the psychological rule they're using against you. You don't have to be a jerk or reject every kind gesture. The strategy is to accept the initial favor or gift, but be ready to redefine it as a tactic if it's immediately followed by a request. As soon as you see the rule being used as a weapon, its power just evaporates, and you're free to say no without feeling guilty. At the end of the day, Cialdini's work is really a double-edged sword. It's an incredible defense manual against manipulation, but it's also a highly effective playbook for persuasion. Knowing these principles comes with a certain responsibility. It can help you make better decisions, spot when you're being led on, and even communicate more effectively. But how you choose to use that knowledge, well, that's entirely up to you.